The morning light spread slowly over the great Amazon rainforest. The air was thick with mist, and every leaf shimmered with drops of dew. Far below the clouds, a small research camp stood near a quiet river bend. The camp was made of simple tents, solar panels, and a few metal crates stacked neatly. From a distance, it looked like a small island of human life surrounded by endless green. Inside one of the tents, Mira sat beside a portable computer. Her dark hair was tied back, and her eyes followed a set of strange lines moving on the screen. The lines pulsed in a rhythmic pattern like a heartbeat. She had been studying the same signal for 3 nights, and each time it returned stronger and clearer. It came from deep under the forest floor, from a place no one had ever reached. Mira worked for the Human Science Alliance, a group that studied ancient sites linked with lost human technology. Her partner on this mission was Ravi, a quiet man who loved plants more than machines. He believed that the forest itself was a living record that remembered everything that happened on its soil. Many people thought his ideas were strange, but Mira respected the way he listened to nature. Ravi entered the tent carrying a notebook filled with sketches of leaves and roots. He smiled when he saw Mira still watching the screen. "Still the same pattern," he said. "Yes," Mira replied. "It repeats every 21 seconds, always in the same order. No natural source does that. It feels like a message." Ravi looked at the data, then at the forest outside the tent. The sound of insects and birds filled the air. The jungle was never silent, yet this signal had a kind of silence inside it, as if it came from something that had waited for a very long time. "Where does it come from?" Ravi asked. "About 10 kilometers east of here," Mira said. "The readings show a metallic core under the soil, but there is no record of mining or any structure in that area." Ravi nodded slowly. "Then we go and see it," Mira smiled. She liked his calm confidence. He moved like someone who already knew the forest would guide him if he showed respect. The next morning they prepared to travel. The air smelled of wet earth and fruit. The forest floor glowed faintly under the filtered sunlight that passed through the thick canopy above. They packed food, light equipment, scanners, and a small drone that could fly above the trees. Before leaving, Mira checked the radio connection to the base. The signal was weak but clear enough. They began their journey on foot, following a narrow trail that the local guides had used in the past. The forest surrounded them completely. Tall trees rose like green towers, their roots twisting across the ground like old veins. Every step they took released new scents of soil, flowers, and wood. Strange calls echoed from unseen animals high above. Ravi often stopped to examine a plant or a piece of bark. He carried a small recorder and spoke softly to it, describing how each leaf caught the light or how a root curved in a perfect spiral. Mira watched him with a quiet smile. She admired how he treated every part of the forest as if it were alive and listening. By afternoon, they reached a small clearing near a stream. The air felt cooler there. Mira checked the scanner again and saw that the signal strength had doubled. The source was close. Her excitement grew, but she tried to stay calm. They set up a small tent and decided to rest before moving farther. As the sun began to set, golden light filtered through the trees, painting everything in shades of amber and green. Mira sat near the stream and let her fingers touch the cool water. It reflected the sky like a broken mirror. She could hear the faint pulse again from the scanner beside her, a deep, steady rhythm under the earth. Ravi joined her and handed her a cup of tea made from forest herbs. The smell was fresh and calming. "You know," Ravi said, "some stories say the forest protects what it wants to keep hidden. Maybe this signal is part of that protection." "Maybe," Mira replied. "But if the forest wants to keep it hidden, why send a signal at all?" Ravi looked thoughtful. "Maybe it is ready to be found." Night came quickly. The jungle turned into a world of sounds. Crickets sang in endless waves, frogs called from the stream, and far away something like a drum echoed softly. Mira sat inside the tent writing notes about the signal. Every few minutes the pattern changed slightly as if reacting to their presence. It was almost like the forest knew they were listening. The next morning they packed again and followed the scanner deeper into the green maze. The trail became steeper and wetter. Large roots crossed their path and strange flowers opened as they passed. The air grew heavier, filled with the smell of unknown plants. Mira felt both wonder and unease. The signal was stronger than ever now, and the device in her hand began to vibrate. Suddenly the drone, which was flying a few meters ahead, sent back an image that made them stop. On the screen appeared a massive formation covered with moss and vines. It looked like a wall, but it curved in a perfect arc, unlike any natural rock. Gold glinted faintly between the roots. Mira's heart beat faster. They had found something extraordinary. They moved closer with care. The ground under their feet felt strange, as if it was made of a smooth, hidden surface covered by soil. When Mira cleared away the vines with her gloved hands, she saw that the wall was made of stone mixed with a metal that shone softly in the light. Symbols were carved into it, lines that spiraled into circles, forming patterns too precise to be random. Ravi traced one of the carvings with his fingers. "These lines remind me of plant roots," he said. "They seem to grow outward, not inward." Mira examined the design carefully. "It looks like an entrance," she said, "but it is sealed." They walked along the curved wall until they reached a part where the vines were thicker and the gold shone brighter. There, a small hollow space revealed itself, a doorway almost hidden by nature. The signal reader in Mira's hand beeped softly, confirming that the source was inside. Ravi took a deep breath. "It feels like the forest has been guarding this place for centuries." Mira nodded. "And now it wants to show us." They decided to camp nearby before trying to enter. Ravi collected samples of the plants that grew on the golden stone, noticing that their roots seemed to draw energy from the metal itself. He believed that the tomb, if it was one, might be connected to the living forest through those roots. As evening came again, the area around the curved wall glowed with tiny lights from insects. The air hummed gently, almost in rhythm with the pulse from below. Mira recorded the data while Ravi drew maps of the structure. They spoke little, each lost in their own thoughts. The sense of discovery was strong, but so was the feeling that they were standing before something ancient and wise. Later that night, Mira sat outside the tent and watched the stars through the small opening in the canopy. The scanner lay beside her, its soft sound blending with the forest's music. She wondered who had built the structure and why it was made of gold. Was it a tomb, a temple, or something else entirely? And why did it seem alive? Ravi joined her and sat quietly. "When I was a child," he said, "my grandfather told me that the forest remembers everything. He said every leaf, every root, every drop of water carries memory. Maybe this place is part of that memory." Mira listened carefully. His words matched what she felt deep inside. The air around them carried a presence, not threatening but full of meaning. She looked again at the scanner. The signal had changed once more, forming a new pattern that looked almost like a human heartbeat. It was as if the tomb below had noticed their curiosity and was greeting them. Before they went to sleep, Mira wrote in her journal, "The signal is alive. It reacts to sound, light, and even movement. The gold structure appears to be both natural and artificial. We are close to learning its purpose, but it feels like the forest is testing us first." As she closed the notebook, a light breeze passed through the camp, carrying the scent of flowers and rain. The trees swayed gently, and for a moment the golden carvings on the wall reflected the moonlight in patterns that moved like flowing water. Mira watched, filled with a sense of peace and wonder. The jungle seemed to whisper around them, not in words but in feelings. The signal, the gold, the forest, and the humans were all part of one great story that had just begun to awaken. And as the night deepened, Mira and Ravi fell asleep under the breathing canopy of the ancient Amazon, unaware that their discovery would soon reveal not just the secrets of the tomb, but the forgotten truth of humanity's bond with the living earth. The next morning arrived with the soft light of dawn passing through mist and green leaves. The forest was calm, but there was a quiet energy in the air, as if everything was waiting for something. Mira woke first. She stepped outside the tent and looked at the curved wall covered in golden vines. Dew rested on the metal like tiny jewels. The sight filled her with a deep sense of awe. Ravi soon joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. His calm smile made the morning feel even brighter. They both sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the forest around them. Birds called gently from high branches and a river hummed in the distance. The place felt alive, as though every sound and movement was part of one great pattern. Mira turned on the scanner again. The signal that had brought them here was now louder and more complex. It no longer repeated one rhythm but formed waves that rose and fell, almost like breathing. She noticed that every time the light touched the gold on the wall, the signal changed slightly. Ravi noticed it too. "It responds to sunlight," he said. Mira nodded. "Maybe it needs light to wake up fully." They moved closer to the curved structure and began clearing away more vines. Beneath the green surface, the wall revealed carvings of circles and flowing lines that looked like rivers meeting at a single point. The more they uncovered, the more patterns they saw. It was not just decoration. It was information written in a language that combined art and science. Ravi studied the shapes carefully. He traced one spiral with his finger and saw that it led to a small golden mark shaped like an eye. Around it, tiny dots formed what looked like constellations. "It reminds me of the night sky," Ravi said. "These dots could be stars." Mira looked closer and compared them with star maps stored on her device. She realized the same pattern appeared in the constellations visible from Earth thousands of years ago. Whoever built this place had known the stars and perhaps wanted to connect the sky with the Earth. They followed the carvings around the wall until they reached a smooth golden plate hidden behind thick vines. It reflected their faces clearly, even in the dim forest light. It was not simple gold. It acted like a mirror. When Mira leaned closer, she noticed her reflection seemed to move a little slower than her actual motion. "It reacts to energy," she said softly. "It is not just a mirror. It measures or reflects something more than light." Ravi placed his hand gently on the mirror's surface. It was warm, almost like living skin. The moment his hand touched it, the golden plate shimmered. A small vibration passed through the ground. The vines around the mirror slowly loosened, and the golden lines along the wall began to glow faintly. Mira stepped back with a mix of excitement and caution. The air filled with a soft hum that seemed to come from the stone itself. The golden mirror rippled like water, revealing behind it a faint doorway shape. The energy coming from it was peaceful, not harmful, but strong enough to make them feel its presence. "This must be the entrance," Mira said. Ravi agreed. "The forest is allowing us in." They waited until the glow settled, then slowly stepped through the opening. The passage behind it was wide enough for 2 people. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of wet stone mixed with flowers. Light entered through tiny holes in the ceiling, reflecting from hidden gold surfaces that spread it evenly across the walls. There was no need for a flashlight. The entire tunnel glowed softly on its own. They walked slowly, careful not to touch too much. Every few steps, Mira stopped to take readings, and Ravi made sketches of the walls. The carvings here were even more complex than outside. Some looked like roots, others like waves or wind currents. It felt as though the builders had recorded everything they knew about nature's flow. As they reached the end of the passage, the tunnel opened into a large circular chamber. The sight made both of them stop in amazement. The room was filled with golden surfaces shaped like leaves and petals, each reflecting the light from above. The reflections bounced across the room, creating soft, moving patterns of light on the walls. It was like standing inside a living mirror made of sunlight and gold. In the center of the chamber stood a tall statue, carved from the same gold-metal mixture. The statue was of a human figure holding a sphere between its hands. The sphere itself glowed faintly from within, as if lit by an unseen source. The statue's expression was calm, almost kind, and its eyes seemed to follow the light around the room. Ravi approached the statue carefully. "It looks like it is protecting something," he said. Mira circled around it, studying the floor and walls. On the floor, small golden tiles formed a spiral pattern leading toward the statue. Around the edges of the room, strange plant roots had grown through the cracks, wrapping themselves around parts of the golden walls. The roots shimmered slightly as though they carried the same energy as the tomb itself. "This place is alive," Mira whispered. "It grows with the forest." She looked up and noticed that the ceiling was covered with small mirror-like panels, each positioned at a different angle. When sunlight passed through the holes above, the mirrors reflected it toward the golden sphere. The entire chamber worked like a living mechanism, powered by light. Ravi pointed toward a cluster of carvings on the wall near the statue. They showed humans planting trees, shaping rivers, and holding hands with strange glowing vines. It seemed to tell a story. They lived with nature, Ravi said, not above it. Mira felt the truth of those words. These ancient people had not built machines to control the forest. They had learned to build with it. The tomb was not only a place of rest, it was a record of harmony. Suddenly, the sphere in the statue's hands brightened for a brief moment. The mirrors above shifted their angles slightly, sending new streams of light across the chamber. The reflections formed shapes on the wall that looked like letters or symbols. Mira held up her scanner, and the symbols translated into short phrases. The translation appeared on her screen. Memory of the green people. We guarded the balance. When the world forgets, awaken the song of life again. Ravi read the words aloud, his voice soft and filled with wonder. They left a message for us. Mira looked around, her heart beating with quiet excitement. They knew someone would find this one day. Maybe they wanted to remind us of something important. They stayed in the chamber for several hours, recording everything carefully. Ravi noticed that each mirror reflected not just light, but also a faint image of plants and stars. When he tilted his head at the right angle, he could see entire landscapes within them, mountains, oceans, and skies that were not from this exact location. It was as if the mirrors remembered places far away. Mira tested the sphere's light using her instruments. The reading showed a gentle energy field, unlike electricity or magnetism. It felt closer to what living cells used when they communicated. She believed the energy inside the tomb was natural, drawn from the forest itself. By evening, golden light from the setting sun entered the small holes above, turning the whole chamber into a sea of warm color. The reflections danced like living flames across the walls, making the carvings appear to move. The statue seemed to breathe with the light. Ravi sat on the floor watching the patterns with a peaceful smile. This place is more than history, he said. It feels like the forest built this with human hands, Mira agreed. She wrote in her notebook, "The tomb is a bridge between humanity and nature. The builders understood energy beyond our science. They turned gold, light, and life into one system that remembers and grows." When they finally stepped back outside, the sky had turned orange and purple. The forest greeted them with the sounds of evening birds. The golden wall behind them glowed gently as if aware of their discovery. Ravi looked back one more time before they started walking toward their camp. "The tomb is not silent," he said. "It listens," Mira smiled. "And it remembers." That night, as they rested beside the stream, they could still feel the hum beneath the ground. The signal that had brought them here no longer sounded mechanical. It now pulsed like a heartbeat that matched the rhythm of the jungle around them. The forest and the tomb were one, and somewhere deep below, something old and wise had just begun to awaken again. Morning came with a light mist drifting through the trees. The air was cool and filled with the soft songs of distant birds. Mira woke to the smell of damp soil and fresh air. The memory of the golden chamber still played in her mind like a dream. She could not forget the way the mirrors had moved or how the golden sphere had glowed as if alive. She knew they had touched something ancient and kind, something waiting for humanity to listen again. Ravi was already awake. He sat near the stream, his small notebook open, drawing the roots and leaves around the camp. His calm manner gave Mira comfort. The forest seemed to respond to him. Even the insects near him flew gently, never landing on his hands or paper. "The signal is quieter today," Mira said while checking the scanner. Ravi looked up with thoughtful eyes. "Maybe it does not need to call us anymore," he said. "We are already here," Mira nodded. The signal had guided them to the tomb, but now it seemed to rest. Yet something else had changed. The air felt charged, not in a heavy way, but full of soft energy. The forest seemed to breathe with them. The trees swayed slightly even though there was no wind, and the light filtering through the leaves moved in a rhythm that matched the soft pulse of the scanner. After breakfast, they decided to return to the tomb to study it further. The path they had walked the day before looked different now. Flowers had bloomed where there had been none. The ground was covered with a carpet of new moss that shimmered faintly. Ravi knelt to touch it. "It is growing faster than natural," he said. "The forest is changing." Mira looked around. The plants closest to the golden wall were brighter in color and thicker in shape. The air around the tomb felt warmer. When they stepped inside again, they noticed that the mirrors had adjusted themselves. The reflections on the walls now formed moving shapes that looked like waves of wind or flowing rivers. The golden sphere still glowed faintly, but now it pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm. Mira recorded everything carefully. Ravi stood near the statue, listening. "Can you hear that?" he asked. At first, Mira thought it was only the echo of their steps. Then she realized there was a gentle humming sound coming from the walls. It was not a machine noise, but a natural tone, like the deep sound of tree trunks vibrating during a storm. The entire chamber seemed to sing softly. Ravi closed his eyes. "It sounds like the earth is breathing," he said. Mira adjusted her scanner to capture the sound waves. The readings showed patterns identical to those of tree roots communicating through the soil. She remembered reading that plants could send signals through their roots to share nutrients and warnings. But this was stronger and more organized. The tomb was acting as a heart for the forest around it. They spent the day studying the carvings again. This time the symbols on the wall glowed faintly when touched. Each symbol released a different tone. When Ravi touched several in a row, the sounds formed a simple melody that echoed beautifully through the chamber. It felt like the walls themselves were singing in response. "It is not decoration," Mira said softly. "It is language," Ravi agreed. "A language of sound and light." The two of them began to understand that the tomb was not built only to remember the past. It was built to communicate with life. Every mirror, every golden line, every root that touched the walls was part of a great living system that connected earth, air, and light together. When they stepped outside for lunch, they found that the forest had become strangely calm. The usual hum of insects had faded. The trees stood still, yet the leaves glowed faintly from within. The air shimmered with a fine golden mist that had not been there before. It did not feel dangerous. Instead, it felt warm and welcoming. Mira stretched out her hand. Tiny glowing particles settled on her skin, forming a soft pattern that looked like leaf veins. They did not burn or sting. Instead, they pulsed gently, matching the same rhythm as the tomb's golden sphere. Ravi looked at her hand and then at his own. The same glow appeared on him too. "It is sharing something with us," he said. "Maybe it wants us to understand." Mira felt calm and curious. The energy seemed to enter her senses, filling her with images of rivers, trees, and light flowing through the world like living veins. She saw in her mind a time when humans and the forest worked together. People used golden roots to build homes that grew like plants. They sang to the earth and the earth answered. She saw mountains covered in gardens and cities glowing softly in harmony with nature. Then the vision faded, leaving her in the quiet clearing once more. Ravi looked at her and said quietly, "You saw it too, didn't you?" "Yes," Mira replied. "It showed us its memory." They both stood still, filled with wonder. The tomb was not just a relic. It was a bridge between the ancient world and the present. The builders had known that one day humans might forget their bond with nature. The tomb's purpose was to awaken that connection again. Later in the day, the signal from the scanner changed once more. It now pulsed in waves that spread through the soil and air. Mira watched the readings as the signal traveled outward, moving through the forest like ripples in water. She realized the energy was spreading from the tomb into the surrounding trees, then farther beyond. Ravi touched a nearby vine. It vibrated softly, echoing the same rhythm. "The forest is speaking," he said. "It is telling the world that it remembers." As the sun began to lower, the light passing through the canopy turned golden. The trees seemed to reflect that color even more strongly. Everywhere Mira looked, small patches of gold appeared, not as metal but as living energy inside leaves and flowers. It was as though the tomb's heart was beating through the entire forest. Mira and Ravi returned to the chamber one more time before evening. Inside, the mirrors now reflected images not of themselves but of the forest outside. They could see trees, rivers, and mountains projected across the golden walls, as if the tomb had become a living screen showing the pulse of the planet. The statue in the center stood still, but the golden sphere in its hands now shone brighter. Mira noticed faint shapes moving inside it, like tiny lights flowing through liquid gold. She stepped closer and placed her hand above it. Warmth spread through her fingers and up her arm. Her heart began to beat in perfect rhythm with the sphere's pulse. Ravi watched her closely. "It is syncing with you," he said quietly. She smiled softly. "Maybe it is syncing with all of us." The light from the sphere grew until the entire chamber glowed in shades of gold and green. The walls showed flowing roots that seemed to move like rivers. A soft sound filled the air, deep and peaceful, like 1,000 trees whispering together. Mira and Ravi could not understand the exact words, but they could feel the meaning. The forest was saying that it remembered the time when humans listened, and it was ready to share that bond again. The tomb was not a warning or a grave. It was a gift, a living message about unity and balance. When they stepped out of the tomb for the last time that day, the forest had changed completely. The mist sparkled in the air. Every tree glowed faintly with golden veins running through the bark. The river near their camp reflected the same light, moving gently as if guided by a calm breath. The forest was awake, alive, and aware. Ravi sat on a large root near the camp and whispered, "It feels like the whole world is breathing together." Mira wrote in her journal with steady hands, "The forest has begun to communicate through light and vibration. The tomb is a living part of a larger system that connects all forms of life. This is not magic or technology alone. It is a forgotten science of balance." As night came, the glow did not fade. It moved softly between trees like fireflies. The stars above seemed brighter too, as if the heavens themselves answered the forest's song. Mira and Ravi sat beside the stream in silence, feeling peace rather than fear. The forest had spoken. It had not used words but life itself. The tomb had awakened its memory, and now the pulse of that memory was spreading far beyond what they could see. The world outside might not know it yet, but something new had begun. A quiet return to the harmony that had once joined humanity and nature in one great rhythm of life. The forest woke early that morning. The air was rich with the scent of green leaves and soft rain. Sunlight broke through the tall canopy, scattering bright gold patches across the ground. Every leaf seemed to shine. Mira stepped out of her tent and stood quietly, watching the forest around her shimmer in the light. She felt as though she was standing inside a living dream. Ravi joined her, holding his small notebook and a cup of tea. His face was calm, but his eyes glowed with quiet excitement. "The forest feels different," he said. "It feels awake," Mira answered. They both turned toward the golden wall that hid the entrance to the tomb. The surface gleamed in the early light, and the vines that had once covered it had pulled back as if making room for the day. It was as though the tomb itself wanted to see the morning. Mira checked the scanner she carried. The signal from the tomb had changed again. It now pulsed slowly and steadily, forming patterns that repeated in cycles. It was not random anymore. It was organized almost like a heartbeat that carried meaning. She watched the lines rise and fall on the screen and wondered what message lay inside those waves. After breakfast, they entered the tomb once more. The golden mirrors inside glowed softly, lighting their path without need of torches. The air was cool and filled with a soft hum, a tone that seemed to blend with their breathing. The walls reflected their images in endless patterns, creating the feeling that they were walking through light itself. When they reached the main chamber, they saw that the golden sphere in the statue's hands was brighter than before. The light inside it moved in slow swirls like liquid sunlight. The reflections from the mirrors created patterns of roots, rivers, and stars across the room. It was beautiful, but also purposeful. Each line of light seemed to point toward something. Ravi noticed that the light from the sphere formed symbols on the floor. He traced one with his finger and saw that it connected to a pattern on the wall. "It is like a map," he said. Mira studied it carefully. The map showed lines that spread outward like rivers but ended in circles shaped like seeds. She realized that these circles matched the locations of major forests across the planet. The Amazon was only one of them. The others might also hold similar structures hidden beneath their trees. "They built more than one tomb," Mira said quietly. "This is only one part of something much greater." Ravi smiled. "Then the forest is not just speaking to us. It is speaking to the whole world." They spent hours recording the patterns, drawing sketches, and collecting data. Each time they stepped near the statue, the energy in the chamber shifted. It was as if the tomb responded to their curiosity, opening new layers of information when they were ready to understand more. When Mira placed her palm near the golden sphere, the light brightened again. The air around her warmed gently, and a vision appeared in the mirrors. The reflections no longer showed their faces but scenes of another time. The chamber filled with images of people dressed in simple clothes made from natural fibers. These people worked with trees and rivers. They sang while they shaped the earth, and the plants responded by growing into patterns that matched their songs. Ravi watched silently as one of the images showed a group of these ancient people standing before a golden tree. Its roots glowed and its leaves shone like the mirrors in the tomb. One of the people placed their hands on the tree, and light spread from it across the land. Rivers brightened, fields flourished, and the air became clear. It was as if the people and the planet had become one living being. Mira whispered softly. "They used gold not for wealth but as a bridge. It carried their energy, their harmony with the earth." Ravi nodded. "Gold is the memory of the planet. It holds light and life together." The mirrors changed again, showing other images. They saw great storms and dry lands where people forgot how to live in balance. The golden trees faded in those images and the harmony broke apart. The tomb seemed to carry sadness in its light, as if remembering the time when humanity turned away from nature. Mira felt a gentle ache in her heart as she watched. They built these tombs to save what they could, she said. They knew one day someone would need to remember. The images slowly faded until the mirrors reflected only soft light again. The chamber returned to stillness, but now the hum of the tomb felt deeper. The forest outside responded too. They could hear the wind move through the trees in slow rhythm, as though echoing the song from the vision. Ravi sat down on the floor, cross-legged, and looked around the chamber. "It is strange," he said. "We came here searching for old technology, but we found a living memory instead." Mira smiled faintly. Maybe true technology was never machines. Maybe it was understanding how to live with the world. For the next several hours, they tested how the tomb reacted to sound. When they spoke softly, the mirrors vibrated slightly. When they sang a note, the reflections shifted into patterns of waves and leaves. Ravi sang a short melody he had learned from local villagers. The entire chamber responded, forming golden ripples that spread from the statue to the walls and then faded gently. Mira realized that the tomb stored sound the way metal stores heat. Every voice, every song became part of its living memory. She recorded her findings carefully, noting that the tomb's golden structure acted as both a receiver and transmitter of life energy. Later in the afternoon, they stepped outside to rest. The forest was glowing faintly, and soft golden dust floated in the air. Mira noticed that small patches of new plants had appeared overnight. Tiny flowers with golden centers bloomed where they had walked the day before. The forest was not only listening, it was growing in response. Ravi bent down and touched one of the new flowers gently. "It feels like the forest is trying to remember itself," he said. Mira took a deep breath. "And maybe we are helping it remember." They sat beside the river, letting the sound of water calm them. Mira thought about the vision inside the tomb. The images of the golden trees stayed in her mind. She began to wonder if gold was not just metal, but a living element of balance. The ancients had used it to guide energy through the earth, like roots carrying water. When evening came, they returned to the tomb one last time. The light from the setting sun passed through the small holes in the ceiling, striking the mirrors perfectly. The entire chamber lit up as if filled with liquid sunlight. The golden sphere in the statue's hands shone brighter than ever. Mira and Ravi stood before it quietly. The reflections on the walls began to form new shapes, and once again, the symbols translated themselves into words. Mira read them softly. "Life is not given. It is shared. Gold is the memory of balance. Keep the light alive so the world may remember." The words echoed gently through the chamber. Ravi closed his eyes and repeated them. "Keep the light alive." Outside, the forest seemed to answer. The trees rustled softly, and the golden veins on their bark shimmered. It was as if the forest was listening to the same message. As night fell, Mira and Ravi sat outside near the stream. The golden glow from the tomb cast a soft light through the trees. Fireflies floated around them, moving in the same rhythm as the heartbeat-like pulse from the tomb. The air was peaceful and alive. Mira wrote in her journal, "The tomb carries the history of a forgotten age when humans and nature lived as one. The gold is not treasure but memory. It records energy, light, and sound. Its purpose is not to store wealth, but to remind life itself how to grow in harmony." Ravi leaned back on a fallen log and looked at the stars through the open canopy. "Do you think the other forests have tombs like this?" he asked. "I believe they do," Mira said. "Maybe each one is part of the same network. The world is connected, and these tombs are like hearts that once kept it alive." The forest hummed softly around them. The rhythm of the tomb continued steady and calm. The air felt charged with quiet power, but it was not the kind that destroyed. It was the kind that healed and remembered. Mira thought of the cities far away, the machines and the noise of human life. She wondered if the signal from this tomb could reach them. Maybe the memory of balance could spread again, teaching people how to listen to the earth. The night grew deep. The stars reflected in the water like small golden lights. Ravi fell asleep first, his notebook resting beside him. Mira stayed awake a little longer, watching the golden glow that drifted between the trees. She felt no fear, only peace. The tomb had shared its memory, and now it rested once more. The forest around it grew stronger with every breath. Mira closed her eyes and whispered the words she had read on the wall. Keep the light alive. The forest answered with a soft breeze, carrying the scent of flowers and gold. Somewhere deep within the earth, the tomb pulsed once more, sending a wave of gentle energy through the roots and rivers. It was the memory of gold, the song of the forest and the promise of balance returning to the world. The morning sun rose over the forest with a calm golden light. Mist floated above the trees like soft silver smoke, and the air carried a sweet scent of blooming flowers. Mira opened her eyes and saw the forest glowing faintly around her. The golden light from the tomb had spread farther overnight. The roots near the camp shimmered as though they carried sunlight within them. Ravi was already awake. He stood beside the stream, holding his notebook and smiling quietly. "Look at the trees," he said. "Their leaves are shining even in the shade." Mira walked to his side and watched. Every tree seemed to breathe with slow rhythm. The branches swayed gently even though there was no wind. It was as if the entire forest had come alive with new awareness. "The tomb's energy is spreading," Mira said softly. "It is reaching beyond this valley." Ravi nodded. "The forest is waking." They packed their small tools and decided to visit the Golden Chamber once more before sending their final report to the Human Science Alliance. The tomb looked brighter than ever. The vines that had once covered its entrance now grew in perfect harmony with the golden surface, their leaves shining softly in the light. The forest and the tomb no longer seemed separate. They had become one living structure. When Mira and Ravi entered the main chamber, they found the mirrors shifting slowly as if alive. The golden sphere in the statue's hands glowed steadily, filling the air with warm light. The walls reflected moving images of trees, rivers, and skies. Each reflection blended into another like flowing water. Ravi looked up and said, "It is showing us the world." Mira raised her scanner. The data confirmed something incredible. The tomb was sending signals through the air and soil. Those signals matched the natural energy frequencies found in forests, oceans, and even the atmosphere. The tomb was communicating with the planet itself. "It is no longer sleeping," Mira said. "It is connected to every living thing." They watched in silence as the mirrors displayed new shapes. This time, the reflections formed maps of different continents. Across those maps, faint golden lines appeared, stretching from the Amazon to other parts of the world: Africa, Asia, and the islands of the Pacific. Each golden line ended at a circle, just like the ones they had seen in the map inside the chamber before. "The other tombs are real," Ravi said. "They are awakening too," Mira smiled. "It means the whole planet is remembering." They left the tomb and climbed a nearby hill to see the forest from above. From there, the view was breathtaking. The canopy stretched endlessly, green and glowing under the morning light. But now, among the trees, faint trails of gold shimmered, running like rivers of light. Birds flew above the glowing trees, their wings catching the golden dust that floated in the air. "The light is spreading through the ecosystem," Mira said. "The tomb signal is guiding it." Ravi watched with deep admiration. "Maybe this is how the earth heals itself. The forest is teaching life how to remember balance again." As they stood there, the ground beneath them vibrated softly. It was not a tremor of fear, but one of life. The roots beneath the soil carried the same rhythm that came from the tomb. The energy moved gently through the forest, through the rivers, and far beyond. The scanner showed waves of low-frequency signals moving across hundreds of kilometers. By midday, the air had changed completely. The golden mist that floated above the canopy had grown thicker. Sunlight reflected through it, creating rainbows that danced between the trees. Everywhere they looked, the forest looked brighter, healthier, and full of calm movement. Mira recorded the data carefully, but she knew that what was happening went beyond science. She felt it in her heart. The forest was not just reacting. It was thinking, remembering, and growing with purpose. Ravi walked a few steps ahead and placed his hand on a large tree trunk. The bark pulsed with light beneath his fingers. He closed his eyes and listened. The hum of the tomb blended with the whisper of leaves, forming a song that seemed both ancient and new. "It is singing," Ravi said softly. "The forest is singing again." Mira stood beside him and placed her hand on the same trunk. A gentle warmth spread through her palm, then through her whole body. She felt an image forming in her mind, not a picture but a memory. She saw people planting trees, caring for rivers, building with the forest instead of against it. She saw balance and respect. The forest was sharing its memory with her. When the vision faded, tears of joy filled her eyes. It remembers the first humans, she said. It remembers when they worked with it as one. Ravi nodded. And now it wants us to continue that path. The rest of the day passed in quiet wonder. The forest changed before their eyes. Flowers bloomed in places where the soil had once been bare. Birds sang in harmonies that seemed to follow the tomb's rhythm. Even the air felt lighter, as if the world had taken a deep breath after a long sleep. By evening, they returned to the camp to send their final message to the Human Science Alliance. Mira sat before the communication device and began to record. Her voice was calm and steady. "This is Mira and Ravi from Site 7, she said. "We have discovered that the Golden Tomb is not a burial site. It is a living mechanism that connects nature and energy. The structure communicates through light and sound. It appears that similar sites exist around the world. The tombs are activating together, restoring natural balance. The forest is healing itself. This is not an event of destruction but of renewal." She paused and looked at Ravi. He nodded in agreement. Mira continued. "We believe the tombs were created by an ancient human civilization that understood the harmony between life and energy. Their message is clear. Life must be shared, not taken. We will stay here to observe the changes." She sent the message. The small transmitter blinked, showing that the report had been delivered. Then she switched it off and listened. The forest's soft hum filled the air again. It was more than sound. It was language. As night approached, the golden glow from the tomb spread farther. The river near their camp reflected it like a ribbon of light. The stars above seemed brighter, and their reflection merged with the glowing trees, making it impossible to tell where the sky ended and the earth began. Ravi sat on a rock near the water. "Do you think the world will understand?" he asked. Mira looked at the glowing forest. "Maybe not at first," she said. "But when the air grows cleaner, when the rivers flow stronger, they will know something has changed." Far away, they could see faint glimmers of gold appearing on the horizon. It was as if the light was traveling through the atmosphere, reaching other lands, other forests, and maybe even the oceans. Mira imagined coral reefs glowing beneath the sea, deserts blooming again, and mountains humming with the same rhythm. The tomb signal had become the Earth's heartbeat once more. Ravi opened his notebook and began to write. The forest remembers its song, and humanity is part of that music. The Golden Tomb is not a relic of death, but a seed of renewal. It carries the light of understanding, the balance of life, and the harmony of all things. As he wrote, a soft golden leaf drifted down from a tree above and landed on his page. It glowed for a few seconds before fading into the paper like ink. He smiled quietly. The forest had left its mark on his record. Later, as night covered the valley, Mira and Ravi sat together beside the river. The sounds of the forest blended with the soft hum from the tomb. The air sparkled faintly, and tiny fireflies moved in graceful patterns, forming shapes that looked like roots and stars. Mira felt calm and full of hope. "The world has not forgotten," she said. "It only needed to listen again." Ravi looked up at the sky. "And now it sings again." The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying the same rhythm that had guided them since the beginning. The forest seemed to whisper a promise, that as long as life listened, balance would remain. In the distance, the tomb's golden light pulsed softly one last time before settling into a steady glow. It had completed its purpose. The knowledge was no longer trapped inside walls of gold. It lived now in every leaf, every river, every breath of air. Mira and Ravi stayed awake late into the night watching the glowing forest. The sky was filled with stars and the air carried the sound of life renewed. They knew they were witnessing the beginning of something greater than discovery. It was a return, the world remembering its own heart. The forest no longer hid its secrets. It shared them openly, weaving its memory into the rhythm of the planet. The Golden Tomb stood silent and shining, not as a monument of the past but as a guardian of life. And as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Mira and Ravi felt the earth hum beneath their feet. The signal that once called them had become part of everything. Humanity and nature were no longer separate. The song of the forest had awakened once more, and the green world began to rise with the sun, alive, united and full of light.